Imagine you're in a video game. You know what it is. You start the video game, you pick your rifle, and you say like, oh, I want to give it the accuracy upgrade, and just any upgrade, it just happens, right? And you're like, I wish we could do that to our rifles. Well, there's a way we can take the recoil of a rifle, like this 7 PRC. This thing is an absolute bruiser of a rifle. 7 PRC isn't that hard-hitting of a cartridge, right? Similar to a 7 mag. But this is in an ultra light platform, super light, doesn't even have a scope on it. And that's why we used it for testing some things for this video, putting hundreds of rounds through it. And I say bruiser, not metaphorically, but literally had crazy black and blue shoulders many times as we were testing. So very lightweight rifle with a medium cartridge that puts out 37 foot-pounds of energy. We're gonna take this gun and we're gonna give it some recoil upgrades to see how close we can get it. I don't think we can get quite there, but how close we can get it to shooting pretty similar to a 6.5 Creedmoor. Also, later in this video, I am going to finally be able to take the wraps off what is under this right here. You guys, I have spent like literally countless sleepless nights working on this. This is called the Backstop recoil pad. I'm gonna tell you about it a little bit later, but first we gotta have a little bit of fun. Let's take that gun out and I'll show you what we've been up to. We're out in the desert. We're gonna just start with a baseline. Peyton, go ahead and shoot the 7 PRC. Just try to remember, kind of get it in your head what it feels like. Okay. So look at the recoil pad on this. Notice it is a thin little guy on an extremely lightweight rifle.
Oh, he's left-handed.
I am, yes.
He's broken.
He's broken.
Oh, jeez.
What does it feel like?
It hurts. It kicks.
Yeah, it gets you. So again, 7 PRC is not a big deal at all. I've shot thousands of shots of 7 PRC. The issue here is that it has no scope on, it's just crazy lightweight. Let's look underneath and let's see what we're actually using to cushion that recoil. And you'll start to see kind of what happened here. So on the top, it looks like, you know, you have a 1/4 inch of rubber. But in reality, you got like whatever that is, an 1/8 inch of rubber there with just hard plastic that's really pushing against your shoulder. You have a little squish in the middle, but the sides are, you're just basic. It's almost like there's no recoil pad. And I mean, it's hitting with such force that it's even cracked that pad. And this is on a premium chassis. That's the recoil pad. If you start taking recoil pads off, like look at the Tika, you know, it looks like you're getting 1 inch of rubber. You take it off and you're like, it's just hard plastic under there. That's why when you push on them, you really feel like, oh man, sometimes it's only going in like 2 millimeters. That's why.
Why are you rubbing your shoulder?
I definitely had it placed wrong and it kicked. It hurts.
Are you hamming it up or is that true?
No, it really does hurt. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if it leaves a mark.
So we said the first thing you can do to a rifle to change the recoil is change the cartridge. That one's pretty hard. The easy one to do is add a little bit of weight to your rifle. One thing I often hear people say is, oh, this is a lightweight rifle, so I want to pick a lightweight scope. And sometimes what I do is I'll have a rifle that's super lightweight so that I can get away with putting on a heavy scope with it, and then I get the advantages of a heavy scope, but still a decently lightweight platform. So this rifle, as is naked, is recoiling at almost 36 foot-pounds of energy. If all I do is put a new scope on there, that takes this gun down to 26 foot-pounds by just adding this scope. So this is from Right On. This is their 3-18 by 50. I've got to be trying this one again. So we add this scope back on and things change dramatically. We just brought down the recoil 10 foot-pounds just by adding 2 pounds of scope and ring and that kind of stuff. So same everything else. I want to feel quantitatively what that feels like. Okay, it was a lot better, like huge improvement. That's not gonna hurt, that's fine. But I did notice the gun moved a lot. The scope's a little bit too close right now and the little scope cap kind of touched my forehead. So ton of movement, but it wasn't painful at all. I could shoot that a lot. We're to change number 3. This is the one that most people are doing when you have a gun that recoils too much, is just put a simple muzzle brake on it. So I did some testing with a muzzle brake compared to a suppressor. Suppressors, I love shooting a suppressor for sure. If every rifle I had a suppressor, I'd be a happy dude. Because it's going to cut the recoil, but also the sound, obviously. But a muzzle brake in general is more effective at cutting the recoil than a suppressor. If you have a 4-port muzzle brake, you're probably going to see about 45% reduction in the amount of recoil you have. So if you have a 6.5 PRC, with this on it, you got a 6.5 Creedmoor. That's a huge change by just using a muzzle brake. Now, obviously the downside to a muzzle brake is, I mean, it's extremely loud. Because I'm around guns a lot, I try to be really careful, and so I usually use 2 kinds of hearing protection if I'm shooting a muzzle brake. The suppressor will probably only cut it by around 35% of the recoil, which is meaningful. But I have a question, and I have not tested. We need to do this in an upcoming video. I really don't know how much the suppressor is cutting it because of the design of the baffles inside, and how much it is you're just adding a 1-pound weight to the gun. Let's go with the muzzle brake here. Let's see how we are now. Man, that's interesting. Okay, we're gonna do something a little sketchy. Let's put no shooter behind the gun. Let's just see, I want you to just see how little that gun is really moving. Okay, that's what's happening. That's the movement without anybody behind it. That's a cool visual because you can see, I mean, it moved back a good 6-8 inches, but that's with nothing behind it at all. That's very manageable recoil. We started with 36, almost 37 foot-pounds of energy. Now, adding that muzzle brake, we're down to around 17 foot-pounds of energy. We've cut it dramatically. We're really close to a Creedmoor at about 12. But now it's time for the fun step. Finally, we get to unveil it after a freaking year of sleepless nights. How many times, Em? How many times have you been going to bed and you're like, are you coming to bed? And what am I doing?
Looking at too much recoil stuff.
Yep, I'm looking at, we come out and shoot hundreds of these graphs, and then we're going through all of them, just analyzing like, why did it spike in this place? How do we change the pad to impact that area? Okay, so here it is. This is called the Backstop recoil pad. It's available right now. It's out there. You can get it. The Backstop recoil pad by Backfire. I'm really proud to say that. It's been a huge project. We got patents coming up on it. Okay, so earlier in this video, I showed you guys this graph. This is what we got from the factory pad that we tested with their rifle at the very beginning of this. So now you're about to see that exact same test, but using our new Backstop recoil pad. Now this is with no other changes, none of the added weight, none of the muzzle brake, nothing else. It's like apples to apples, factory pad, and here's the Backstop. Look at, I mean, it just slashes the recoil. So let me show you what you're seeing. Early, you see the recoil starts to go up right as the recoil starts. And then that's where that top section of the pad that we're going to show you starts to squish early. That just cuts the velocity. It keeps it from gaining momentum early, and then the crumple zone goes at the top. It's having those 2 sections, the early squish and then the crumple, that really makes it effective. It's really, really cool. There are 3 like super unique things about this pad. Tell me about the customization.
So basically we have different lattice structures in here, and each lattice structure correlates with a different energy basically that the gun outputs. Yeah,
so I mean, if you think about it, how dumb is that if you buy a rifle, it doesn't matter if it's a 300 rum or it's a whatever, a 243, you're getting the same recoil pad. Everybody gets the same recoil pad. It doesn't make sense. They're dramatically different things you're trying to slow down.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing, is when you order a Backstop recoil pad, we're gonna ask you, what rifle platform are you using? We'll know the rifle weight for it. What cartridge you're using, if you're using a brake, just a couple basic questions. Then we're gonna do the calculation so we see the real recoil of your firearm. And then this guy makes a custom structure of that recoil pad for you.
Yeah.
How much did it change? Like when we had the wrong structure on a rifle, what did those graphs look like?
Oh, it was night and day. It was insane. Watching the difference between when you finally got the right lattice structure, the difference was, I mean, it was everything.
Oh yeah, and you can visually see why that is. So the second big difference is it uses 2 different densities. So down here is what we call the crush zone. You know, this is like the crumple zone in your car. The idea is it has a lot of airspace so that we can squish down far, but it's in most models, it's stiffer than up here. What you can't see in here is a pretty advanced little lattice structure in there, high-tech lattice structure in there. And so one is harder than the other. And so that means we can cut the recoil early as that rifle's gaining velocity toward you. And then when it gets near that peak, because we can dial it in for the specific cartridge, that's where the crush zone just caps it off and creates that plateau.
Yep, it's pretty cool technology.
I should cut in here with, that's the difference between this pad and something like a traditional pad like a Limb Saver. That they do a good job as a premium pad, much better than most factory offerings. But because it has so much gummy material, one, it's way heavier than this pad. But also, as you push down, it's so much material that, you know, every millimeter, you're just adding the strength. And so it tends to spike more. Whereas this has that crush zone to really help with the travel without the too much mass. Plus the fact that this is just tuned to your rifle's specific recoil, where they're making one pad for everybody, and you just can't dial in the recoil nearly as much. So to do our little test here, we've got to introduce you to some electronics. Peyton is like an engineering genius. It's so cool, the stuff that he's made here. So this is called the BBT, or the Bang Back Tracker. He created this, well, I'll let you talk about it, Peyton. Tell me about this.
So it's just an accelerometer, and it just measures the force of acceleration. So basically, you're able to see how fast it's going to kick the scope.
Yeah, because it's mounted right where the scope will be, and it takes like thousands of readings in just the 1 second of a shot, and it'll tell you any little movement of the gun in any axis. And then it records that data, and then we get it on a graph on the laptop. And we're not doing our full testing procedure that we usually do to kind of get a little bit more precise data. We're just having fun here. And then the next thing is we'll use this sensor. So you'll see when I get into position, he's going to place it between my shoulder and the gun, and that's going to measure how much pressure is on my shoulder. And we can have multiple sensors here so that we can measure all the different areas of the recoil pad. The reason we had to have 2 sensors is most recoil pads are designed just to reduce the pain on the shooter. To us, a really important part is being able to see through the scope, and we wanted to find a balance between keeping the scope from jostling around and also soft recoil on the shooter to prevent flinch. Okay, oh, I don't like this part. Okay, let's go for a ride. Love this. Ready?
Yep.
Okay, let's look at the graph that we get. Okay, yeah. So as soon as the shot starts, so on the bottom, the x-axis is time, you know, just the whatever 1.5 seconds of the recoil, and the vertical is the pressure, how much it was pushing on me. And you'll see it's just like a rocket ship. It just takes off. The recoil pad did nothing to slow it. What we're looking for is just a nice, gentle rolling hill. That would be the ideal deal if we could get there. So that's what we feel on the shoulder. And then we see something very similar on the Bang Back Tracker, the scope jostle. It's the same thing. It just instantly goes to pots. Now, 2 more notes on the testing. You'll see we use a human shooter with every single test we do. That is absolutely key, we found. So the way that like pretty much everybody in the industry is doing it is they put the rifle in a metal recoil rig, they're strapping it down, then they have a steel plate behind the recoil pad, and they're putting a force strain gauge here to measure the pressure against that plate. Now the advantage of that is by not having a human, it's standard, it's going to be the same pretty much every time. The problem with that is Peyton's isn't, but my shoulder is pretty much steel. So the human shoulder isn't steel, and it moves back, plus you have just a little bit of a squish of the skin. And so if you don't account for that, it leads you to create a pad that's way too stiff. And so that's why as we started doing tests, we just realized you have to do it with a human shooter for it to be anywhere even close. The problem is it's not the same every time. We found the result to be very repeatable, but we run every test multiple times to make sure it's statistically significant. Yeah, pretty cool. We started to look at different pads from different companies, and we realized there was a huge problem with recoil pads as a whole. The problem is that a recoil pad, most of them, you have to compromise your design. You have to. Because most guys take a whatever 10, 12 pound gun and they put it on one tiny little corner of the butt pad and lean it against the gun safe for a year, 5 years, who knows? And so you need a material that even after 5 years of having a weight on it, you're going to take it out and it's going to have perfect bounce. That doesn't exist. Any material is going to deform, especially if it's nice and soft and supple, right? Yeah. And so that's where we realized why other companies are doing things the way they are. So I don't want to throw any shade. I won't even talk about the brand because it doesn't matter. They're trying to come up with the best solution they can for this. So this is a nice, soft recoil pad from a competitor. But up here, look at this. Come to the truck. It's hard as a rock up there. And the reason is, presumably what it makes sense to me is, the reason they're doing it is if they had this soft material all the way up and you rest your gun like that, it's going to deform the pad and they have a customer service problem. You see other companies, Weatherby came out with a really smart design of a recoil pad a couple of years ago. They did a lot of things well. Based on what we have found by not shooting, by shooting with humans and the testing the way that we have, I believe it's much too hard of a pad, but they had the problem that if you store the rifle like that, it's going to cause issues. And so they had to really beef that up. And we really didn't want to compromise our design. We wanted to have the perfect performance was the real thing. And then most companies, they're just designing a pad that's just a chunk of stuff. It's just not going to deform because it's just so hard. So, Peyton, tell us about this guy.
So this is what we're going to call the throne. So basically it just slides over the pad and then clips on like that. And then there's a plate that rests on this ridge right here. And what that plate does is it keeps the recoil pad itself from ever touching anything.
There's no pressure on it. When it's stored, nothing.
No pressure at all.
So you're storing your gun like that and there's zero pressure on the pad. Now you don't have to carry this around hunting with you. The pad is not fragile. Believe me, we have stabbed them repeatedly with forks, driven over them, tried them in the cold, the hot, leave them in the sun for 2 months to see how they perform. It is a very, very durable pad. But if you're going to make it the correct density, you have to protect it long term. And so this is just for long-term storage. If you're in the hunting cabin and you lean this against the wall for a week, it's fine. It's durable. But if you're going to store your gun for more than a week, you're done with it for the season, just put it on the throne in your gun safe, lean it up, and you're good. You never have to think about it, and your pad's always going to perform the same as the first day. Yep. It's time to show some results. I'm doing this in the office because we lost our audio out in the field. Okay, this is the recoil signature of that Tikka 6.5 Creedmoor that I showed in the intro, and I said we're going to try to get to this, okay? I didn't know that if we would quite get there. That's the recoil of the 6.5 Creedmoor stock Tikka factory pad. Now, this is the recoil of the 7 PRC. Look at that. It's like this tiny little blip on the radar. And this is with all the modifications, with the brake, weight, and the backstop pad. Insane what it has become. But look where we came from. Because on that 7 PRC, here's the stock where we started with the factory pad. And then we added just the backstop pad, and look how much just the pad changes that recoil signature. And then you do all the other stuff too, and it's just this little blip on the radar. It's time to be done with the tiny little cartridges for hunting. Bring the big guns and do stuff to your rifle to make it shoot well. But there is one more change that you can make to a rifle to dramatically cut your recoil. This is a favorite one for me especially if you have kids, and that is just change your load. It makes a big difference. There are some cartridges that if you look around, you'll find reduced recoil loads. You'll find them especially in kind of the classic kid cartridges. You'll find it for 6.5 Creedmoor, definitely 243. You'll find it in 308. If you look for those reduced recoil. So what they're doing, and of course if you're a hand loader, you can just do this however you want. But you know, they're putting a little bit less powder in there, so that it's just not shooting as fast. But the bigger change is switch to a lighter bullet. All right, Peyton, we got now the backstop recoil pad on there. We added 2 pounds for, you know, scope, and we've added the brake to cut down 45%. At this point, this thing is gonna perform like a Creedmoor. So pay attention, not just to, well, look at how much the gun travels, that's gonna be cut, but also the view through the scope changes so dramatically. That is pretty cool.
Yeah,
like
that's awesome.
And as we've just worked on this project and actually measured it, like so often I realize, like, what the heck, why do we even talk about should you hunt elk with a Creedmoor? That's such a dumb question. Take a man's cartridge. Take a man's cartridge and set up your gun properly, and you can, it's not gonna bite you. You can see through the scope. You're not gonna develop a flinch. You just have to set up the gun right.
Yeah.
Look at all
Here's
this
try number
carnage.
3.
It's from all your testing.
Oh man, we've burned through so much ammo.
Yeah.
I don't even want to look at the receipts for how much we spent on ammo testing.
It was rather a nightmare trying to clean it all out of the bed of the truck. All of these empty cartridges.
Suffice it to say, I have plenty of brass to be reloading.
Okay.
Get that carnage out of your way. It really is calm. Like you don't have to be nervous.
So,
if you make all the changes.
where do I stick it? Wait. Oh yeah, you taught me this once.
Oh yeah, getting straight behind it. Good.
Yeah. Okay. Now I just shoot it.
Yeah, it's gonna be fine. It really is no big deal.
Okay. What if it's not? Do I just pretend?
No.
Just kidding. Whoa. That wasn't so bad. It's a pretty powerful gun though, right?
It is a powerful gun. Did it hurt at all though?
Oh no, no.
I just love the honesty here. It's like, it wasn't so bad. After we're showing this recoil pad and stuff. Too funny.
I do not want to get in the business of trying to, you know, overstate a product or anything like that. I feel like I'm one of you guys. We're in this together. And so a lot of the companies, great companies making recoil pads will, you know, throw out numbers. Reduces recoil by up to 70%. I love the up to, right? I would say, just like totally subjective feeling, it's probably about 35% lighter with the recoil pad. Like, just totally subjective. Now, by the numbers, in a lot of cases, it's a lot more than 35%. But it really depends on just how you measure recoil. I don't like the peak pressure as the measure because of this. If I press in very, very deeply on my shoulder, but I do it slowly, it doesn't really hurt. Mm-hmm. It's when I jolt at it, that's when it hurts.
Right.
And so even the peak pressure, I just don't know that there's any single number that you can say that's the number we use to measure recoil.
Yeah, which made it really difficult for you to even go about testing this because we had to establish our own test.
Exactly. And so what we really go for is the shape of the curve. We want it to be shaped nicely so that nothing is jostling sudden, and that's where you have a hard time seeing through the scope. And so we really optimized for that as much as possible. Thank you so much for everything you've done supporting Backfire. Please check out the backstop recoil pad. We've put, I mean, just everything into it. It's us making it. Like if you have customer service that has a phone number, you're gonna talk to us. Like we don't have people, it's us. You know, we're making it here in the United States and shipping it out to you guys. So thanks everybody for your support. Backfire has just been awesome what it's done. See you guys.